Well, I think one of the big things for me in life is accepting difference. And one of the big difficulties I have is when I find it difficult to accept difference, you know. I can understand it. But sometimes I can't do it. You know, I get locked in my own view. It might be a view about politics, it might be a view about religion, about anything. Or culture. Sometimes I get locked into ideas about Irish music. Sometimes I get locked into ideas about theatre. I have very kind of firm views as to what is the nature of good theatre. And I get locked into it, and I forget sometimes that there's a thing called difference. You know, that other people have a different view. And really that's a surprise to me sometimes. And I'd say it's one of the things that I learned from Buddhism was that sense of not tolerating another person's view, but recognizing that their view is true for them and is true. You know, that the view I have of the world, I'm trying to negotiate my way through life. I'm trying to make meaning out of life. And it's not easy. You know it's not easy. Sometimes you can get into a pattern, you know, and it's simple, so you don't really ask big questions. And if your life is going on at a kind of a levelly, natural rhythm, day in, day out, kind of boring and a bit dull, you don't have to ask any big questions, but every so often the big questions arise. Might be a tragedy in your life, it might be an illness in your life, something happens and you say to yourself, you know, what's the meaning of life? And you try and work it out. I try and work it out. And I don't know, and I think that the reason why I became a storyteller, the reason why I write or do podcasts, is because I'm constantly trying to push an idea of what might be true. Not that it is true. And I talk about my faith experience, but I don't talk about it as if it's true. I talk about it to share the story of how I get through the day. And I think that what I feel is valuable is that maybe that gives you permission to do the same. In other words, you don't have to be right in an argumentative way. You don't have to justify what you're doing. What you're doing gives you meaning. And that's all that there is. Gives you meaning. This is the way you find meaning. Imagine somebody who does a lot of work in the garden, and they grow vegetables and they grow flowers and they have a beautiful garden, and it's you know, food comes out of it and it's beautiful to look at with all the colours and the flowers. And imagine somebody else comes along to look at it, somebody that would never pick up a spade. They don't feel the person that's digging the garden is wrong. That's their way of finding meaning. And that would be very close to my position, because I'm not good in the garden. What I love is wilderness. And so when we had a little bit of land, about, you know, nearly an acre, and our lives were beginning as a kind of a married couple and a family, I would have planted trees. And trees, they grow on their own, and they grow beautifully. And they decide what shape they're going to be. They do the whole thing, and then every year the leaves fall off and they go asleep in the winter, and spring comes and they have new buds, and you have nothing to do. You don't have to water them. You don't have to feed them with fertilizer. You don't have to replant them, or you have to prune them a little bit, but they just do their own thing, and that's the best I can do in relation to engaging with the earth. And then I see somebody else, and they have a beautiful garden of onions and carrots and cabbage, and I admired them, and sometimes I would be jealous. There's a little humanity in you that would think, oh, feck them, I'd love to have a garden like that, you know? Or I'd love to have that talent. But in general, it's really a normal thing to look at difference in the world and accept it and rejoice in the difference, because it makes your life more interesting. And then the same is true for different cultures. More and more we're beginning to live in this global village where there are people around us who are from all sorts of different nationalities, different continents. When I was young, I never could imagine meeting somebody from Russia. I could never imagine meeting somebody from Poland, even though my father was raised by his Polish granny, and I used to wonder about Polish people, but I never met one. And certainly as regards people from China, well, all I know, or all I knew when I was young, was that there were people went around in kind of kimono sort of things. I know that's not Chinese, but this was the image we had, like that they weren't wearing Western clothes, and on top of their head there was a kind of a conical lampshade. That's the image we had of people from China. You know, a huge portion of the entire world with totally different languages and cultures. And that's the idea that I had as a child growing up in Cavan. In Cavan we used to have a little game as children, which was collecting the registration numbers of cars. Because cars were so few and far between, and yet they were interesting because we sensed that they were so modern and they were so useful for getting us in and out of town. We sort of sensed that cars were the future, so they were sexy in that sense. You got a buzz out of seeing a car. And we used to stand at a wall outside Lisdarn Hospital, and we'd just stand there leaning against the wall, young fellas. We were 8 and 9 years of age, and we'd be collecting registrations. And we'd have little books. Everybody'd have a little notebook. And when the car would go past, you'd write the registration down. Now everybody would write the same one down. It wasn't a competition, but the competition was how many you had. So over days or weeks, if you were at this, you might have a little notebook and there was, 3 pages full of registration numbers, and then you'd meet your friend and he might have 20 pages. And then, in those days when the car would pass, it usually was ID, because ID was the Cavan registration, the first 2 letters. And then eventually there was AID, and BID, and CID. And you'd collect those, and you'd write them in your little book. But if somebody saw IT, or LI, or even ZA, well, they'd get fierce excited, because that meant it was a car from either Leitrim or Roscommon or maybe Dublin. And you'd be excited to see a car from Dublin. The idea of ever mixing with people from China or Russia or Warsaw, Poland, was very remote. We didn't even think about it. I remember the wireless in those days. The wireless in those days had a dial on it, and it had little names. Athlone was on it, and Danzig, and Warsaw, and London. And sometimes I used to turn the dial. It was a manual dial button, and you'd wind it round and you'd see the little red stick moving from left to right on the screen. And as it moved across, you'd hear the radio signals changing. You know, that kind of way in an old radio? And then it would come to where there was a signal and you'd hear somebody speaking in a foreign language. So you'd stop, you'd be moving across the word Warsaw, and the next thing you'd hear a voice speaking a foreign language. And that used to amaze me as much as if I had heard voices from outer space. Those were voices, as far as I was concerned, from another planet. Planet Warsaw, or planet Moscow. And that's the little innocent world we lived in. And our truth was the only truth. When we went to church, to the Catholic Church, the cathedral in Cavan, everything about it was true, and I never doubted any of it. And we used to pass the Protestant church, and it always seemed to me that it was a colder building. The lights were never on as much, and when they were on, and I'd see the old farmers going up the gravel avenue to the door, I imagined that that was a very, very strange place to go. That was as strange as wherever those places on the radio dial were. It was another world. It wasn't my world. It wasn't quite us. And so that sense of confidence in us, in me, in my world, grew and grew. And then multicultural worlds appeared, and airplanes appeared, and we became travellers across Europe. And then the European Union opened up. And gradually we came to a sense that we have our way of doing it, and other people have their way of doing it, and both of us are valid. One person might be a gardener and the other person might be a poet who never put his hand on a spade. Both are valid ways of looking at the world. This is a really, really good insight, that the other person is different but valid in themselves. If that single idea was practiced, you'd never have an argument at the dinner table. You'd never have an argument in politics that was destructive. And if you were working for the other person, then that's taken the extra step into compassion. Where you actually focus on the other person in your life or at the table or politically, and you say, how can I solve that person's problems? How can I make that person happy? What can I do for that person? Because once you get into that energy, you find that just some mysterious energy in nature, it reciprocates. You find that the other person is starting to do things for you. And then it's a win-win situation because you're helping the other person is helping you. It happens with lovers, it happens in marriage, but it also happens in community. when you get two churches where actually they're both working together and both trying to offer each other things that the other one needs. You get an amazing dynamic. And all that stuff for me, I think, really began with Buddhism. I've mentioned them before, but just briefly, there are two wonderful principles. And the first is that sense that the ultimate teaching is there is no teaching. That what you believe, never grasp it as an absolute truth. So that means, you can give up so much in the journey of Buddhist practice. Buddhist practice, how do you be a Buddhist? Well, the Dalai Lama said one time when he was asked that question, he said, get up early in the morning. And there isn't really much more to it. I mean, you get up early in the morning means that you're going to be mindful. You're going to practice some sort of meditation. And that will lead you to embellishing it with little prayers and connecting with a teacher. You get a teacher in Buddhism and you'd find yourself maybe, if you were involved in Tibetan Buddhism, and you'd be doing little prayers to your mentor deity. And those prayers to your mentor deity, like Guru Yoga practice, they help you focus. The same way as the Hail Mary will help you focus. You get up and say morning prayers in a Christian way. They strangely help you focus on being present. And ultimately, the full experience of being is to be here now. There's no way the past can affect you. There's no way the future can affect you, or that you can affect the future. Be here now is the fullness of your life. And what's rarely said is that when you say your prayers, Christian or Buddhist or Islamic, you bring yourself into the present moment. It's a kind of a contradiction, but the idea of eternity, the idea of transcendent being, you could only even think about it by trying to access the present moment. Because the lens through which everything comes is the present moment. So therefore praying and prayer awakens you to the present moment. And I think for me it's like wake up, be mindful. You're in the middle of the day. Sometimes I would take a break from writing. Might write a paragraph and then take a break, have a cup of tea. Have a cup of tea and doze by the fire. There's spaces everywhere in the day to be present and to live in the present moment. And when I'm doing that, and I realize that detachment from all your disturbing emotions, all your negativity, or the negative voices in your head, the demons inside you that tyrannize you with bad ideas, negative ideas, but also all the things that you grasp, all the things that you want. I want a new car, I want a new handbag, I want a new suitcase, I want a new suit, I want more money, I want a new job, all the stuff, just for a moment. I know you have to do it. We have to live, as they say. But you can still detach yourself from these things, and you can find islands of silence. Islands of silence during the day, where you at least look at your attachments. You look at the things you're trying to grip, and you sort of loosen the grip. And you do it in your prayer, and you do it by being present. And you do it by thinking of the shortness of life. The shortness of life and the certainty of death. And you do it sometimes by looking at your good deeds and bad deeds. When you try to live a better life, when you try to examine your conscience, as they used to say in Christianity, you're not just doing it because of some silly notion of a God in heaven, far away, who's going to judge you at the end of your life. No, you're doing it because it will allow you to become more mindful. Examining your conscience is not, writing in the book all the bad things. It's more about looking at your actions during the day, looking at, how you were angry during the day, or how you just spent an hour too long on the computer watching, wasting time with Facebook or TikTok or whatever you watch. And becoming aware of the negative things that you're doing, like that, or your attachments, or your unconscious addictions. In a sense, how many drinks did you have last night? How many nights in the past 7 did you drink? All that examination is not for some neurotic, repressive reason. It's very Buddhist. It's very liberating, because you're looking at the way that you're living. You're looking at your attachments, and you're looking at the ways that you're negative and that you have disturbing emotions. And what's the consequence? You will let go of them. When you become aware of them, you gradually become free from them. I used to be hugely argumentative when I was young, and when I was socially with other people having a glass of wine. I couldn't resist an argument. I loved and relished, and I would defend the fact that argument and discourse is a very healthy and good thing to do. Now, it is, yes, and they do it in universities, and it's part of European philosophy to argue and discuss and take different positions on any idea. But I used to go too far. And I began to become aware of it. Largely because I had a really solid companion who had a special way of looking at me to remind me that I was getting to the threshold of being boring or being annoying in any dinner table conversation, because I'd get so gripped on one argument and I wouldn't let it go. And I think inside it was anger. It always is anger. I think sometimes the root of everything, certainly for me, would be anger. And I was hugely impressed with my own teacher, the Panchen Utral Rinpoche, one time many years ago, when he said to me about himself, he said, I have anger. That's the disturbing emotion that he was dealing with. Now, he's considered to be a very high reincarnation in Tibetan Buddhism, and he's telling me he gets angry. No, he didn't say he gets angry, but he did say, I have anger. Like it's a karmic energy that he has come into this life with it. And your karma, your negative deeds, follow you like a shadow. And so he had this anger in him. But he's an enlightened human being, because he's conscious of it. And in fact, to be honest with you, now that I think of it, the first day that I went over to Jampaling and really threw myself at their mercy, please help me, I'm 40 years of age, I can't afford psychotherapy. I know that Buddhism is a kind of psychotherapy. I don't want to get sick and ill and mentally disturbed, so I need help here. And so I went to a Buddhist center. Now, the reason I did, I don't think I've ever said this before, but the reason I did move over that day and do that, 20 miles away, was because the night before I was having an argument with a guy in a pub. And it went so far, it got so intense that I realized I was at the threshold of the two of us becoming physically aggressive. I felt possessed. I felt possessed with anger. And that's in, I'd say, about 1996. And so I knew I had to change, and I took Buddhism as a way to do it. I still have anger. The karmic disposition towards anger that I may have had at that point in time, I still have. But the more you become mindful, the more you become aware of your disturbing emotions, the more you become aware of your grasping for things, all the things you want, the more it's easier to let go of them. If you're unconscious of them, well, you're just not in the driving seat. And I'm so blessed that I went in the door that day. In a sense, it wasn't something that I can say that I chose to do, but that's the way life happened. And I think if you keep the idea that you are responding to life, you're not initiating, but you're responding to what arises in life. And that's how you become happy, I think. So that particular day, when I went to Jampeling, and I met a woman there called Marjorie Cross. And Marjorie Cross was the woman who, she lived in a big house in West Cavan, an Owen Doon house. And her husband was obviously fairly wealthy. And she studied Buddhism. Through her life, she had been a counsellor, a social worker. And then her husband died suddenly. And coincidentally, at the same time, somebody had said to her, there's a really interesting Lama, Tibetan Lama, who's over in Scotland, and he'd really be worth bringing over, and we could have a little workshop, 5 or 6 people who are into Buddhism, and bring him and listen to him. And they did that. And as I said, it was just after, I think the first time he came, her husband was alive. And shortly afterwards he died, and shortly after that, Rinpoche came to Jampeling and they set up a big Tibetan Buddhist centre in the house that has been an enormous help to so many people over those years. And she was the first person I met when I went in the door. Not Rinpoche, not the Lama himself. He was away in India at the time, but I met her. And that woman now, Marjorie, is a dear friend. She got ordained as a Tibetan nun later in life. And she's 90 years of age last week. I saw it on Facebook. And she's in the full of her health. And what a wonderful woman. She certainly helped me enormously. And I feel that all of this I'm saying is about that whole beautiful idea. The ultimate teaching is there is no teaching. Because in any of the moments in this conversation that I've been having with you, in any of the moments you could say, well, this is the truth. That what I'm saying about how you deal with mindfulness, how you deal with being awake, how you get up early in the morning, how you try and find moments during the day where you are conscious and mindful, and then how you practice between the meditation sessions. You practice compassion by, number one, trying to find some way to help the other person. It's as simple as that. You just try and find the way to help whoever is with you, whoever turns up on your door. Help them. Focus on them and help them. It may be your daughter, your son, it may be your mother or father, it may be your beloved, or it may be a stranger, or it may be an enemy. Maybe the fellow who lives down the road and you can't stand him. Someone turns up at your door, you look him in the eye or you look her in the eye, and you're mindful in yourself, and you're thinking, how can I help this person? What do they need that I can give them to help them be happy? In the short term, they might want a bowl of sugar. Give them a bowl of sugar. Make them happy in the short term. And the short-term happiness of somebody may be contributing to their journey towards ultimate happiness, ultimate enlightenment. So everything you do in the sense of compassion is trying to bring other human beings to happiness and to enlightenment. So if I give you a bowl of sugar, if you're stuck for tea bags and I give you a few tea bags, I am helping you become enlightened. Yes. Every gesture that you make at the dinner table, in the house, you get somebody another cushion, because if they put a cushion under their foot, they'll enjoy the television program better. When you do that, you are helping that person be happy in the short term. That short-term happiness could potentially lead them to happiness in a bigger way in their life and in future lives and towards enlightenment. Now, this is a very beautiful way to think about, to think about yourself, not as the skivvy, as my mother used to say. Am I a skivvy, she'd say. Well, no. You can feel a skivvy. You can be abused as a skivvy. And if you are, you stop being a skivvy. You don't put yourself in situations where you're damaging your own freedom and happiness by serving somebody else. But you still, in the end, have to serve somebody. There is no other way I can find in my whole life. There's no other way to happiness. Because it's either serve somebody else or yourself. And definitely, I would say from experience, serving myself doesn't make me happy. It's as simple as that. It's either one or the other. But all those ideas are wonderful ideas, and they're very beautiful. So you're compassionate between the meditation sessions, and the meditation sessions are helping you focus on your anger and your negative emotions and all the rest of it. And so you grow, and this is wonderful. Now, then you decide, this is the truth. This is the truth. And you decide that everything else you thought was wrong. So you think, oh, well, I may have grown up a Christian, that was wrong, and I may have been a hedonist and had no religion, and I might have been a Marxist, and that was all wrong. You decide you found the truth. And you're convinced it's the truth. And you love telling people, oh, I'm a Buddhist. Oh, I'm studying Buddhism. This is the truth. And the next thing you start using words like, you should read this book. Or you should meditate. Or you should do Reiki. Or you should do mindfulness. You start pushing this truth on other people. Why? Because it's the truth, or that's what you think. It's substitute the word teaching for truth. It's the teaching. This is the new teaching, and this is the true teaching. And then you listen to that beautiful line, the ultimate teaching is there is no teaching. Doesn't mean to be nihilistic, but it means to step back from gripping your teaching, your practice, your truth. Step back from it and live in the mystery of not knowing. And that's why the second lovely idea that I wanted to share today is about balancing yourself between substantialism and nihilism. It's a different way to say the same thing. It's saying that don't take your life as real. Don't get claustrophobic with who you are, where you feel caged into some intense reality. So you have a husband or you have a wife and you have children and this is your life, and it's like, you know, you're looking at the paint on the wall and you're thinking, that's just the paint on the wall and I'm claustrophobic and it's not even good paint. Don't take it too real. There's a line in a beautiful prayer. I must do this prayer sometime, but there's a line: treat all phenomena as like illusion. To treat all phenomena, phenomena, everything, to treat it all as like illusion. Now, just do this for a minute. Just do this right now for a minute. So look around at the things in your room, or if you're walking wherever, just look around and just begin to treat everything as if they were illusions. As if you were in a dream. And this works. You know, this works. There's a way that sometimes it can happen. You're at the dinner table and you're chatting to people and it's like you're in a dream. You drift back into your own mind, your own revelry, and then you come back to the table and you're looking at the person across the table and it's like you haven't been exactly listening to what they were saying, and the whole thing looks like a dream. And I'm not talking about when you're having too much wine. I'm talking about being sober but having a sense that you're actually in a kind of a dream world. Everybody has this sense. Everybody can access this wonderful sense of the dream, that you're actually living in a dream. Or as that prayer says, as like illusions, to treat all phenomena as like illusions. Okay. So you do that, but here's the point. You don't do it completely. The mistake is when you start thinking, oh, well, maybe life is an illusion. You know, it's just an illusion. No, it's not just an illusion. Okay, so it's real. So it is real. This is real. No, it's not real. There's somewhere in between substantialism and nihilism. There's somewhere you balance. You know, the way I talk about living on the surface and then living at a depth. That the surface around you has a depth. And you can live a sense of the depth. It's like the surface is like an illusion. But you never go fully there into that space and say, oh, well, everything and all phenomena are illusions. No, they're like illusions. In Buddhism, when people talk about emptiness or shunyata, you know, that the room, the walls, the cup, the delf, it's all empty. They don't mean it's like not there or that it's an illusion. But they mean there's a dimension to it that is beyond the way you perceive it. So I perceive the world. And I have to choose the world that I perceive, you know. And I choose the world I perceive ethically. I have a whole shape inside, a kind of a narrative shape that says, this is the good thing, this is the good way to live. And that helps me choose the world so that I say, this is my home, these are my people, this is my family. I'm aware of all that reality around me. It's not an illusion. But I can get trapped in the reality of it sometimes, in the surface reality. And it can make me feel claustrophobic. It's like extreme materialism. And treating all the world around you as like illusion is in some sense like spirituality. You know, it's like thinking about living on the inside. And when you pray to mentor deities, whether it's Islamic or Christian or Buddhist or Jewish or Hindu, you are using these figures, these presences, these archetypes, whatever you want to call them, but you're using them within your narrative they're like a lens. They bring you into the present moment. And they bring you awake. They awaken you in the present moment. And this present moment is balanced between nihilism and substantialism. And that's what they call in Tibetan Buddhism the correct view. The correct view is not to take the world at the surface level. And it's also a mistake to take the world rejecting the surface level and thinking it's all about the depth. Living in the depth all the time, you know. That's a mistake sometimes people make when they move from Western culture into Asia to study the philosophies of Asia. And they get into Buddhism. And they kind of withdraw from reality, you know. But you can't, because reality is there before you. The surface is there, and the surface is very, very beautiful. You know, the rain falls in May outside my window, and then it stops raining, and the clouds break, and the sun comes through, and it slants powerfully across the rooftops and hits the wall, and it's very beautiful, and it's very real, and that's the surface. So the surface of the world is there. But you can treat it as like it's an illusion. And that kind of opens the door into the depth, the kind of deeper way of experiencing this cosmos. Not as merely a surface, but as the expression of something invisible. In that sense, everything becomes animate. I find that always, when you do that kind of meditation, not just the trees begin to talk to you, but the stones on the ground and the wood paneling in the room in front of me. Everything begins to shimmer, if you like, pulsate, if you like, with some kind of quantum cosmic energy, because it is actually simply a frequency. It's like this moment is a frequency within which I am choosing to identify and to name and to say, this is my room, this is where I am sitting at the computer, this is what I'm doing. And it's real, yes, but when I treat it like an illusion, not treating it as if it is an illusion, but like an illusion, I'm kind of floating between substantialism and nihilism. I'm not making either of those two great errors, great mistakes that people make when they study Buddhism. No. I'm balanced in the middle. And I know there's a surface to the earth, there's a surface to my experience, and there's a depth. And when I get that far, I say to myself, the ultimate teaching is there is no teaching. When you say that, at that stage, if you like, in the meditation, it's like letting go of the last little bit of a life raft. And now you're floating. You're floating. And you're in the present moment. So that the entire journey of the meditation has been an exercise in letting go of the linguistic structures of meaning. And when you let go of those linguistic structures, you're just not holding to any truth. You're not holding any teaching. You're not holding any meaning. You actually are the meaning. You are the truth. You're here, present, now. So I'll just go through that very simply again. Begin with wake early, it's a good one. Be mindful. Be aware of your body, or do various exercises of mindfulness. Or do them in little islands of silence that you can find during the day, where you relax at the fire, you relax in the sunshine, you relax anywhere. You're dozing by the fire, maybe, whatever. And then just stop. And go through all that stuff about your negative emotions, your disturbing emotions, your anger, your jealousy and stuff like that. Examine your conscience, as they used to say in the old days. And become aware of those things in you. Like you're saying, well, I have anger, same as my teacher said to me, I have anger. Now I'm aware of it. But now I realize that the anger and all the other disturbing emotions are actually only clouds in the sky. And that when I become aware of them, it's like they dissipate. And then it becomes blue sky. My presence feels like I am blue sky. I am empty. These things grow in me, these grasping and wanting things. Or negativities. They grow in me. They're like clouds that cover the sky, but just by becoming aware of them, I let go of them. And now I'm thinking of my intention to be compassionate. I'm thinking of my intention to be compassionate to the next person who turns up in my life, whether it's my beloved, whether it's my children. And now I understand that that's the way to make myself happy. Even if it's my enemy, to find out what makes them happy and work at it, and that will make me happy. And then maybe I say a little prayer. I may say Hail Mary if I'm a Christian, maybe a Buddhist prayer. Going for refuge is a lovely one. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, through the positive potential. You make your prayer, whatever it is, and that will bring you very much into the present moment. Now you're in a calm, abiding state, and you're feeling this sense of compassion to other people. You're feeling the sense that you're wakening up to your disturbing emotions and the things that are like clouds in the sky. So you're getting to a good space. And you look around and you treat all the things in the room, everything, especially, it's good not to close your eyes, I think, in meditation. I notice always in Tibetan Buddhism, they would say, don't close your eyes. When you close your eyes, there's a danger you go into this foggy world where you are treating everything as illusion, because you're living on the inside, totally. But the real place to stay is balanced between inside and outside, balanced between depth and surface. And your intention and motivation is for the benefit and the well-being of somebody else. And there you are. You are in the present moment. You are here now. You're present. And you're present not just mindfully now, but your mind has gone into your heart, as they say in Orthodox Christianity. In your heart, your nous is opening out. Now, this is a very, very beautiful place to be. And you have helped me this afternoon to get there. Like, I'm now in a good mood. I feel myself blessed in this moment of being present. I feel I'm going to have a lovely Friday evening, a lovely weekend, because I'm in the right mood. You know what I mean? Do you know when you're not in the right mood for something? It's usually because you're not being fully present. And now I feel I'm present because of you, because helping you by trying to talk like this, I find it's bringing me to the same place. A place of calm abiding, of being here now, and of having this sense of love or compassion, but also being aware of the negative energies that are in me, my anger, all my nasty emotions, my demons, if you like. You don't kind of suppress your demons, you just live with them. That's what's in the beautiful story by Milarepa, which I often tell, where he was in the cave meditating and he couldn't get concentrating properly because there was 3 or 4 demons sitting in the darkness with him. So he went out for a walk and he thought he'd get rid of the demons. If they wouldn't leave the cave, then he'd leave the cave and go out walking. So he went out walking, but he was all distressed. And then he came back to the cave, hoping they were gone, but they were still there. He could see them in the dark, big eyes like saucers, Milarepa said. And eventually he spoke to them and he said, do you want a cup of tea? And they said, okay, we'll have a cup of tea. I said, fair enough. And he made them a cup of tea, the demons. And everybody was happy. And sometimes that's the very best way to deal with your demons, with your anger. Not to try and banish it or suppress it or say, well, I'm not going to be angry anymore, but actually just to be aware that you live with this demon inside. Talk to it. Talk to the demon. And eventually you'll make a pact with the demon. You'll say, I don't want you to possess me anymore. Like you can sit there and I'll acknowledge you. I'll feel anger. I know I'll feel anger. So I'll acknowledge you, Mr. Demon called anger. But no more possessing me, no more breaking the furniture on me. In my heart. And that's a good way to deal with your demons. Another way is feeding them. I often tell that story of a time when I had a stone, a big flat stone, a slab in the garden, and I used to put bread out every morning, and people would think that I was putting the bread out for the birds, but in actual fact I used to do it as a ritual to ritually feed all the negative demons that are inside you. Doesn't that sound crazy? And yet it works. Because in the ritual, you're objectifying your negative energies, you're personifying them as demons, and you're actually taking control of them. Because in the ritual, you're feeding them, you're leaving the bread there, you're saying, now, may my negative demons eat that piece of bread and be satisfied. And that ritual is like an exorcism for your negative energy. So all those things are wonderful, and then you come back all the time come back to this idea that the ultimate teaching is there is no teaching. And come back to the idea that you live on the surface and you live in the depth. You live on the outside and you live in this spiritual world inside in your imagination. Not one or the other. Not some sort of commitment to a kind of a spiritual realm that you just put as opposed to the physical realm. But that you find the physical always is the surface of what is sacred. Food, drink, sex, love, joy, everything physical on the surface is the surface with a depth of the sacred within it. And you're living here now. Be here now. As I say, you've helped me. So I hope that you have a wonderful weekend. And this is available on Patreon. And I'll see you next weekend. Well, I won't see you, but I'll be talking to you. And I will be here, I hope. And I hope you're here. Thank you. Have a lovely weekend. Bye-bye.